Pree, Bisma, and Amanda. um, if each of the panelists could introduce themselves and say a few words about what you do, what you're working on or have worked on, that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Pauline. Thanks, Miranda. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Pree. I usually introduce myself as an artist educator. I've been involved, well, I kind of like pivoted from academia to community arts about 3 years ago now, which is when I dropped out of my PhD. And yeah, I've been facilitating arts-based workshops, kind of like creating and leading arts-based projects, collaborative events, doing all of the things. And yeah, I'm excited to chat with y'all today. I'll throw it over to Bisma.
Hey, my name is Bisma. I go by they, them pronouns. And I guess I'm a OCAD student in my 4th year in photo, and I minor in art and social change. Currently, I'm working on a few different things. Some to mention is like a queer Muslim TikToker documentary, which will hopefully be done within the next 2 weeks. I'm also working on like a photo series of like non-binary folks and their style within Toronto. And I also am customizing clothing that, you know, pertains to like queer Muslim Pakistani stuff that includes it all in clothing. But yeah, that's just some stuff that I'm working on.
I accidentally turned off my video when I tried to unmute myself. Just doing that, those Zoom things. Hi everybody, I'm Amanda Ann-Min Wong. I use either she, her, or they, them pronouns. I'm a film director, a writer, a sound artist, and musician. I have a number of short films and web series that have screened internationally as well as locally. Most recently, the docu web series How Tiohtià, which features different local non-traditional artists per episode, and we kind of follow how they do their work and how they make their art in the advent of a pandemic, and as well as some other documentaries that I have in festivals right now. An Object of Merit is about a Korean Canadian ceramic artist, sort of exploring his Korean influence and Canadian influences on his work. And The Way We Are, which is about 4 queer East Asian women here in Toronto who are now, they used to be active in a group called Asian Lesbians of Toronto back in 1989 to the early 90s. And now it's sort of them reflecting back on their life and growing up. So that's my film stuff in a nutshell. And I'm also a member of Cut Sleeve, which is your local queer East Asian alt rock band. Follow us on Insta, doing a shameless plug. And I'm very excited to be here and chatting with everybody today.
Thank you so much, everyone. Awesome, amazing intros. I guess we can kind of start with like a big, wide-reaching question. So what does care mean for you, just in general?
I can go first, I guess. For me, care means like the community care is so important, because a lot of the time when we're like, as working artists, we're out on social media and people see our faces or they see our work and they criticize us, and having like that community care to help uplift us afterwards is really important to have, because I know personally if I didn't have that, then I probably wouldn't still be doing what I do. And also just to like care about other people in the community as well who might not have as much like privilege as like I do, to like amplify their voices through that same mode of care. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, Bisma.
Amanda, did you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I really relate to that too, Bisma. And I think personally for me, it's like, prioritizing people and the experiences that we have over sort of things and results and, like the end goals. Like, I feel like people I don't know, we live in a society that like wants results and answers, and don't realize that sometimes that harm can be done to people when we're just limited to our utility, right? Like what we can make or what we can bring. But, you know, when we kind of look at each other beyond our utilitarian purposes, what kind of, you know, experiences and how much can we like foster better like working practices with each other, both, you know, in creative or in personal life. And obviously like consent for everything. Like anytime you do anything, I feel like a huge part of care is like making sure that someone is okay with what you're doing. Don't assume that anyone is okay with anything.
Yeah, that's such a good point with like everyone's access needs are different and everyone's comfort levels are different. And especially like, I guess like with us being online now, setting those boundaries a little bit more clearly, especially like if our arts practices are very visible online as well. Like it doesn't mean like you can come into my DMs and say something homophobic to me ever. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, those are really great responses. I think for me, like my concept of care is also informed by community care, like Bisma said. And then my siblings in class. Okay. That's okay, so I'm allowed to go. Thank you, brother. Yeah, so like for me, my concept of care is really informed by community care. I don't know, as one of those like weirdo, weird ass kids, and I didn't really understand how folks were like so in love with their families and like so in love with their friends. I felt like that for a long time until I like found my people that like really like they are there for me in moments of joy. They're there for me in moments of like hardships, and I found those folks within like the community arts community. When I moved back to Toronto and like kind of like went on that path 3 years ago, like I said. And then other parts of my like my concept of care come from disability justice. So like a lot of folks within my chosen family, and I would say like within community as well, are mostly like disabled folks or like folks that have chronic illnesses as well. I personally describe myself as being disabled, multiply disabled and chronically ill. I'm a cancer survivor. And so like a lot of those elements really inform like how I live my daily life and my creative practice as well. And so, yeah, a lot of my concepts of care come from disability justice and like thinking about concepts like mutual aid and how important that is. And just like seeing a lot of like my chosen family, like creating initiatives like the People's Pantry and like creating things to like make mutual aid possible, as opposed to like charity that comes from nonprofits to like keep the nonprofit industrial complex going.
Yeah, like I guess like the concept of care is like not being like this top-down function, but more so like what can we do with like what we have and with each other as well. And kind of, as Bisma said, like people who are there like checking in with you or like just like checking in with each other as well. And also like a bit later we're going to talk about what does care and creativity and community mean in kind of a capitalistic neoliberal environment. I guess thank you everyone. So far, I guess the next question would kind of be, and Pree kind of started to touch upon this, like what, like have any of you worked with or been involved in with any groups, organizations, collectives, or spaces that you think show care, and how do you think care is shown within these spaces?
I guess I'll go first again. I hope I'm answering this right. I sometimes like work with this organization called Marginalized Majority, and they do a lot of amazing stuff. I would definitely check them out on Instagram. They have like multiple workshops every month, and they're the people behind it. There's such a diverse like amount of people in charge of all of these like workshops, and they try their best to like like the person who started it, he's like a queer era person, but he tries his best to like also include spaces for, you know, Black queers and like, you know, South Asian people and like East Asian people. And I don't know, I think like that organization does a lot in the community, and they deserve a lot more recognition. But yeah, there's that. And there's also like, I started this Discord server. It's like massive now, but it's for like a bunch of like queer South Asian, Middle Eastern, North African folks. And the amount of care that I see in that like whole community is just amazing. Like if someone's having a bad day, everyone's just like, let's have a video chat. There's just like 20 people on a video chat, like comforting each other. It's hectic, but like it's just so sweet to see these kids do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bisma. Yeah, that sounds great. And also like, yeah, like mobilizing care online as well. Like when, and I guess like with it being on Discord, like any, like from throughout the world, like people can join and like find solidarity and a safer space there. And I guess like one thing I was thinking, we were pre-organized a queer trans BIPOC zine fair a few years ago. It was my first zine fair, and that was so amazing. Like I was thinking that like you created the space where there were people there just to be active listeners, or like people there just so that they can take over your space for 5 minutes, so you can go to the bathroom, like literally like thinking about access and care and community in that way. That was really great.
Yeah, I remember that. That was also my first zine fair that I tabled at.
Yeah.
We were right beside each other.
Yeah.
It was really well done.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wholesome. Oh my god. Oh man, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like just for some context, I co-founded a collective a few years ago called the Non-Binary Color Collective. And one of the main things that we did was like, we hosted a couple of zine fairs that were called the 2SQT BIPOC Zine Fair for Two-Spirit, queer and trans, Black and Indigenous and POC folks. And I started it with a friend that I had met at the Sick and Disabled Zine Fair, which is run by a community member named, oh my God, why is my voice cracking so much? Not even on testosterone. Yeah. By a community member named Ku, who runs the Sick and Disabled Zine Fair. And yeah, it was kind of born out of noticing like that year when I started to get into zines and community arts, I ended up vending at like 10 different zine fairs. And what I noticed was that they were like predominantly white. And if they were aimed at like racialized folks, they were overwhelmingly like light-skinned East Asian, like OCAD students, like a very particular kind of gatekeeping. And like, I didn't really see folks like myself. I didn't really see Black and Indigenous vendors either. So our collective was born out of like applying for some tiny grants and like trying to make a space that prioritized having Black and Indigenous folks most primarily that hadn't had an opportunity to like print their work before or to vend their work before. And then also having marginalized and like historically oppressed people of color to be a part of the fair as well. And yeah, the second one was like even bigger and better. And yeah, there was active listening, there was childcare, there was food for all the vendors. Cause like, if you've ever vended at an art fair, you know, like you don't eat, like you're lugging your suitcases of stuff at the house and just trying to make it on time. And especially if you're disabled, trying to just get in the Uber and whatnot. And yeah, so we wanted to make sure that there was like full and healthy meals for everyone. And just noticing the gaps that like I had experienced and my friend had experienced in our own experiences. Yeah, so that's like some of the organizing work I've done. And yeah, I'll kind of leave it at that. And I'm open to like answering any questions about that. And I'll throw it over to Amanda.
I was gonna say these sound so amazing, like the collective you're talking about, and also Bisma's like Discord server. Like it's really warming my heart to hear all these stories, and these projects. I feel like I had a similar thing where it was like I didn't really see how should I put this? Okay, so when I was first starting out in the film industry, it was very predominantly white and of a certain level of privilege. And like I have a certain level of privilege too, being even able to get into the film industry, to be there. There's a lot of gatekeeping for sure. And I thought that this was it. This was like what my life was going to be like. And then I got introduced to a bunch of really great organizations that do show care. And first one was my film was accepted to Real Asian. And this was like the beginning of my relationship with the Real Asian Film Festival. And they are a film festival who I would say, you know, has shown tremendous amount of care to not only their artists, but to fostering new artists, to helping them get into the industry. You know, any sort of, they've fostered writers, they've also like given opportunities to different groups to take part in the festival too, who aren't even necessarily film related. So that was awesome. And I was like, wow, this, I can see something, like I can see more than just this white world, you know what I mean? And then recently there's a new organization called the BIPOC Film and TV, or is it BIPOC TV and Film? One or the other. If you're interested in film and TV and you identify as a Black, Indigenous, and or a person of color, please go check them out, because they do so much great work with the community and with the film industry. And they give lots of opportunities for people to sort of enter into writers' rooms, or, you know, mentorships, or setting up, you know, like, you know, these 15-minute calls if you want to talk to a specific person in the industry. And they do a lot of like outreach work to get others in the film industry to recontribute to like emerging artists as well. So definitely check them out. They're really great. They run a lot of workshops too. Like, I think that personally, also on the music side, joining the band was a learning and growing experience for me, into seeing like the ways that we can care for people in a like in a large group sort of setting. Like when we play these shows, you know, there's sort of like this assumption that people can just like, you know, there's alcohol and oh, like there's, you know, people do this, oh, it's just because they're drunk. But, you know, we can't just excuse behaviors in these sorts of group shows sometimes. So we have, you know, it's just like just start thinking about ways that we can continue to make sure that people feel safe in places, and that they feel safe going to shows, or that the shows are accessible, you know, pay what you can, or that even like just the small things, like making sure that there are, you know, gender neutral washrooms available, that people know where the exit is, you know, like just simple things like that to help make spaces more accessible and for people to be more comfortable within that kind of setting as well. So kind of just thinking about how we can merge, you know, this sort of, yeah, we can still have fun and rock and roll, but we can also make sure that no one gets hurt and everyone feels great and has a good time. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, everyone. And like for all the things that you pointed out, resources, things like mentorships, I feel like are really cool. Yeah, and I guess like getting a little bit more specific now, how do you try to mobilize care in your own projects or in your relationships with others?
Yeah, I think
Me again.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Pree.
Go for it, Bisma.
I guess personally, like almost like all of my projects are community based, and I involve the community when making them, and I discuss, like when I go on shoots with people for collaborative things, I talk to them about the series. I talk to them about their experience with whatever it is that I'm shooting about, and with like the short documentary, like I have actively like asked my other like TikToker friends, like, you know, are you comfortable with saying this? If, you know, you can say this on the record now, a few days later, if you decide you don't want that to be on the record, just let me know and I won't include it. And really emphasizing these things, because when you're collaborating with the community, you need to make sure that there's like consent every step of the way and even afterwards. You know, signing those like media release forms is also really great. But yeah, hope that answers it.
Thank you. Yeah, and this idea of that consent can be revoked at any point. Like if you don't feel comfortable with something at some point, to say like, no, like I don't want this to be involved anymore. Or, like, can you take out this part? And I guess like also fostering an environment where people feel comfortable like saying no. Like I guess, yeah, like part of that as well. But the fact that you can say no at any point, and like like that conversation of consent between everyone involved. Thank you.
I'll go next, I think, because I feel like I've been just letting Pree and Bisma go first and not speak it and going last. If that's okay, unless you want to jump in, Pree, you're good. Okay. I feel like on a film set, if I'm leading a project, it's very important to make sure that, you know, everyone's safety, comfortability is number one, and that like we have an open communication to discuss things and make sure that everything is accessible to people on different levels. If you work in film, or if you have worked in film, or if you're interested in it, there's sort of this very rigid hierarchy that can come with working on set. And if, you know, it's less so in the non-union, although it does exist, but especially in the union, there's like a huge hierarchy of, you know, of levels. And whenever you have like a really rigid hierarchy, I think there's always a potential for an abuse of power, not whether it's intentional or non-intentional. It is, you know, there's certain like, you know, unrealistic expectations set for people, or people expected to do things for people who are like on a higher level, supposedly higher level than them. So, you know, in a utopian world, I would like to banish levels altogether. But what I can do, at least on my sets, is that, you know, trying to work within this framework that like, no one feels more or less than everybody else, you know, even though we have different roles and some people have more responsibilities than others, that whether you're a mentor or a mentee, that everyone in the team knows that we are all like working on the same level. So I think that most of the people that I work with, I would never hire someone who doesn't adhere to those kinds of, you know, just making sure that we don't take advantage of anybody, which is so often this happens to film. And this comes from like seeing it happen all the time, and also it happening to me, and also unintentionally, you know, accidentally doing it to somebody else. And then so you constantly also have to recheck what, you know, your own actions and your own intentions. Because a lot of these things, you know, sure, they're unintentional, but they still happen. So we just want to try and like talk about how we can make ways that like to not have that happen. You know, just like simple things, even if I'm, okay, so if I'm not leading the set, if I'm just like another worker bee on set, even like simple things like, you know, asking if people are okay, checking in on them, you know, save them a seat at lunch, like simple things like that to show, like go a long way, I think. And I think that also when I say communication, I also am reminded to think about the ways that people communicate. Like not everybody is someone who's going to be outspoken, right? Like they're not, some people prefer to write instead of speak. Like some people prefer to speak one-on-one instead of like in a group. So just in terms of like accessibility to that communication, to remember like everybody's different like communication styles too. And that's like sort of in the film world. And I went on a ramble, I'm sorry. Pree, please go ahead.
No, I think that's so good. And like I've made a couple of short films, but I don't really have too much experience in like TV and film as an industry. And so yeah, it's really interesting to hear. Sorry, someone's just in the waiting room. Gonna let them in. Yeah, so like I'm really interested in hearing your perspective, especially because we haven't met before and I've worked with Bisma before. So yeah. Pauline, can I ask you to repeat the question for me? Sorry.
Yeah, just like how do you mobilize care in your own work, or yeah, in your relationship with others more broadly conceived as well?
Okay, cool. I used to be very like in the same way that Amanda mentioned, like when there is a hierarchy, like there are totally, like it's necessary to check yourself as well, because you can totally unintentionally cause harm. And I think just as a result of my own traumas and like white supremacy, I used to be very of the mind that like things need to be like go, 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 go. Like there's a grant, we need to apply. There's this, we need to go. There's this, we need to go. There's this, we need to go. And definitely a learning curve for me that like, yeah, like it's not realistic, especially like when folks have like historically oppressed identities and everything that might be going on in their own life. And like, just because I can balance a certain, I don't know, speed and like I'm a bit of a workaholic doesn't mean that everyone else needs to or wants to do that. And so for me, it's just look like, you know, prioritizing people's feelings and understanding that like sometimes you're not going to meet the deadline. Sometimes you just have to put everything on hold. And sometimes it's not about the work, like it's about the relationships. Yep.
Yeah, completely. And I guess like that leads into our next question, was just thinking about like broadly in a time and a system where overworking is the norm, capitalistic and neoliberal notions of productivity are the norm. How do we take care of ourselves and also take care of each other? And I know Pree kind of just like talked about this, but yeah, if anyone else has anything to add.
Amanda, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. This is a loaded. It's a lot to answer, and so I have to. I'm sort of still thinking about it, but I don't know. I feel like I sort of mentioned it earlier in this sort of like ways that people are like seen as utilities. You know, like we unintentionally, I think, not everybody, but some of us, you know, unintentionally assign roles to people. Like, this is my mother. This is my friend who I go to when I need to cry. This is my, you know, partner who does this and such for me. And then we take advantage, or we take for granted the things that people do for us, and we sort of see them as just like, this is their purpose to us. And I think that a lot of times I myself have to remember that, you know, we live in a society that tells us to look at things as if they are items for our benefit, and they're not, right? And we are also not items for anybody's benefit. Like, we are all just people. And I think that you know, I forget to listen to people beyond their purpose to me sometimes. And so it's something that I'm trying to cultivate, and also trying to talk about within my community, about how we can, exactly what Pree said earlier about, you know, like sometimes there are like these deadlines and things like that, and you want people to be like, this is your job and you should have done this, like we assigned this, like, and like, why haven't you got it done? And then you realize that, you know, that's not their purpose, you know, like their purpose is not to, our purpose in life is not to meet deadlines or to, you know, like fulfill some kind of grant role. Like, sure, they're great, and yes, we can do them, but not in a way that prioritizes that over someone's own life and their own like well-being. So I think it's always a constant sort of reminder to myself, and just talking about it with other people about the ways that we can like remember that, I guess. And it's so hard to do, I know, because everything that we do in work is surrounded around these kinds of sort of markers, right? Of deadlines, of you know, like submissions, of like projects, deliverables, you know, and being surrounded by that kind of language can sometimes be really stressful. I don't know if there is an answer, but I'm very like passionate or interested, I think, into discussing this with other people and hearing what people think about it, and at least the small things that we can do in our life and in our community to try and make that change.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and like even like the word deliverables, or like like that just like struck a chord. Like I feel like I'm like reading I don't know, like an assignment sheet or like a job description or something, where like there's that kind of language, or like the language that reduces us to use value, basically. Thank you for that, Amanda.
Can I jump in real quick? And I just want to, I don't want to step over anyone in terms of time, but just to talk a little bit about the creative aspect of it, and because we're in creative industries, about how kind of messed up it is that so many people ask for free work before, you know, like paying you. So like as a director, they'll ask you to pitch for things. You'll spend like 3 days pitching for something, and then it's only if you get selected that you get paid or you get whatever. So they're basically soliciting free work for nothing, and then they're like, you have 3 days to do it. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, but can we just talk about how messed up that is? Anyway, sorry, I'm passing it on to Pree and Bisma.
You can go ahead, Bisma.
Yeah, sure. With what Amanda said, same thing with like auditioning for roles. I don't know, like sometimes they'll ask for like, hey, can you send us a bunch of clips of you skateboarding? It's like, hold up, let me like go out in like -10 weather and like skateboard for you. Yeah, it just happens. That happens so often with so many different aspects of the creative world. But I guess what I wanted to touch on is I won't like speak on it in too much depth, but like like a couple months ago, I put out like this TikTok about, you know, how I moved back with my parents, like after living on my own and just getting really burnt out. And I had hundreds of comments of people being like, you should have just grinded harder. Stuff gets hard, just grind harder. It's like, but why should I? Like, why is that normalized that I have to be completely struggling to ever get anywhere in my life? Like, why can't we take care of ourselves, take it easy? And I just want to like everyone know in this thing, like in the Zoom call, that you don't have to grind that like incredibly hard to the point of burning yourself out multiple times. Like, you can take care of yourself, take breaks. You know, if you can't get an essay in on time, email your prof. You know, you deserve care, and to, you know, take care of yourself. That's all.
Yeah, I kind of spoke to this earlier, so I think I'll just kind of add in like a slightly different perspective. Just as someone who is like pretty involved in visual arts, community arts, and especially in like zines, I constantly see like call for artists. Like, this is kind of the conversation happening in the chat right now. I constantly see call for artists that either are not paid or they don't explicitly list that if there is a pay at all. So I think like literally every day I probably like have to ask like at least 5 times to like some organization, to some post, to some artist, to some collective, to be like, is this paid? If it's paid, how much are you paying? Like, I wish I could like copy and paste it from my brain directly, because like I spend so much labor just like asking these questions, asking the follow-up questions, then asking them if they'll like advertise that if it's paid, because it's like, why are you not like, yeah, anyways. So all of that to be said, I think like if there's folks like in this class or in this program that are interested in like mobilizing opportunities for other folks, like I would really recommend taking advantage of resources that are out there for like you to be paid for your work, but also for other folks to be paid. Like I love the ideas that community initiatives and community members have, but like the amount of them that don't pay, like, you know, the folks that you're trying to represent or uplift or amplify or like give space to, they can't afford to be like doing additional work for free. So like all you're gonna get is like trust fund babies that have like things covered for them that can create stuff for you for free. So yeah, I think that's kind of all I would add. Just make sure you get paid, and the people that you're creating opportunities for are also being fairly paid as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, pay transparency now and within the creative industries, and I guess also yeah, like the wider arts and culture industry, like there's a lot of been more dialogue now about like working for exposure is not like that's not fair at all. And like who, yeah, I guess like who is able to, like who gets opportunities, and like what is fair pay. So yeah, thank you for speaking on that, and Amanda for bringing it back to kind of the creative industries. I guess we have about 15 minutes left, so I guess we can kind of end off with talking about how we've kind of tried to cultivate community and care in a time of many global crises, like not just COVID, but like the ongoing conversations about colonialism and racism, ableism, the transphobic bills that are happening in the States right now that completely like affect us as well, and like in a different way, but still like that culture of transphobia, and just like so many reckonings and crises. How might we, I guess, continue to try to cultivate community and care in these times when it feels like things are a lot?
I can start with a small point that I don't think, I think that the answers to these questions are hard and difficult discussions. But one way in which I found quite inspiring was like remembering that we are not the first people to do this. We are not the first people to like care about, you know, community and connection, and we're not the first people dealing with crises, you know. You know, as part of one of my films, I was talking to some elders in the community who, you know, they were talking about the sort of work and activism that they were doing back in the 80s and the 90s. And I was sitting there being like, this sounds exactly like today, you know, like it's not something new that we necessarily are doing. It is something that people have been doing over a long time. And I think it's important to remember to also like acknowledge that there has been work that has been done, and to kind of look back on that work and that histories and see how we can either continue on it or improve on it. You know, they also dealt with a lot of different crises that are still continuing on today and that have improved over time. And some of them haven't. So like what ways can we continue to do that? And you know, not needing to necessarily start from ground zero, but like there are things that they have done in the past that can also continue to be implemented today, and like learning from our elders, I guess. Not that all elders are, you know, just the ones who were, you know, sort of more into like, okay, basically I'm just saying like, don't listen to like those people who tell you that, oh, things like we worked really hard back then and we were able to do all this stuff, and why aren't you able? Like those people suck. And but we remember that not all old people are like that, and every generation has the people who are working against you know, oppression as well. So
Thank you for that, Amanda.
I think, yeah, such a big question. I think I would just say like just take note of like what privileges you have and to put those into play with mutual aid. So if you're broke but you're able-bodied, like join a bike brigade to deliver meals, or like run a soup train for folks that can't cook for whatever reason or can't afford food. If you have access to a vehicle, like helping with deliveries for like food banks. Uplift Kitchen creates meals for Black folks. So like just like finding mutual aid initiatives to contribute to. Get your rich friends to donate to those causes, GoFundMes. And yeah, I saw this thing that I shared on my Instagram today that was like, there's this Indigenous birth worker who is disabled and has been fundraising for two things. I think like some kind of mobility device. I think like a newer wheelchair. And then the second thing that they were fundraising for is to have to get a service animal. And like the cost of getting a service animal in Canada, I think is like $25,000 or something. And somebody who made a donation on the GoFundMe mentioned like, there's no reason why this shouldn't be covered under like our health plans. The person lives in Alberta, so I don't know what their like OHIP is called there out there, but yeah, but they were like, until then, like we have mutual aid. And I think just like mutual aid is just like community members helping community members, like figuring out ways to mobilize food, resources, money, housing, like whatever it is. And yeah, like I know it feels really difficult and hard when you're a student, but even if it's just as simple as like taking the time to like share like crowdfunding pages for folks, for trans folks, for mobilize, like to like for like Black trans women. If you're an artist, like you can like sell your art to help fundraise, portions of your artwork go towards it. My family practices Sikhism for the most part, and there's this element of Sikhism that I feel like exists in a lot of other religions as well. It has different names. In Punjabi, it's called dasvand, which means like you maintain 10 to 20% of your income to like redistribute. And like obviously, if you make like a ton, like that number should be a lot bigger for you as well. But I think just like redistributing funds, doing whatever you can, again, like taking inventory of your privileges and figuring out how to like mobilize folks. And yeah, I'll throw it over to Bisma.
To jump off of what Pree said, like sharing these things, like even if you can't, you know, actively like donate funds, there's still so much that you can do to help out the community, and help each other out, especially those that need it more. Like there's even like a lot of the time there's also like these YouTube videos that you can just watch or just have playing in the background, and like everything raised through those views will be donated. And like writing letters to your MP does not cost a thing. A lot of the time there's also like email templates that people create, and you can just copy and paste those. But yeah, like I mean, it's really important thing for us all to do, because like without each other, like the government isn't gonna help these people that need it. So unfortunately, I wish they did. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you everyone for this conversation. I don't want to end it like so heavy. We're like how do we take care of ourselves when I guess like our systems fail us, and like the like normalizations of things like overworking don't work for us, things like that. So thank you for this conversation. I guess we can open the floor now if anyone has questions. I see the chat going off, which is amazing. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. And I guess like for the panelists, if folks want to like put their social media or their websites, whatever they're comfortable with, in the chat, that'd be cool as well. Oh, Paige asked what the name of your band is, Amanda. Cut sleeve, thank you. I guess I'll read out the question in the chat now, but Miranda said, you all have shared so many wonderful projects and initiatives. Can you say a few words about getting started, how and where to start?
Yeah, I can, I would recommend, like I said, because I think it's so important for like folks doing art activism work to be paid. Like I would really recommend looking into like really small grants, like ones where you just like have to answer a paragraph and give your name. So the very first grant, I know that it's not accessible for everyone. Like I totally acknowledge and understand that, but would really recommend partnering with someone that's like comfortable writing, and yeah, putting things into paragraphs and whatnot. But I would really recommend, I don't know if Planned Parenthood still does their youth initiatives fund for 2S LGBTQ folks. That's how we funded the first 2S QT BIPOC fair. It was $1,000, like not a lot. But then for the second one, we partnered with a partnership with an organization, and we had like 70K to like help support everything. And like parts of that went to different elements, but yeah. So I would recommend starting with like really small ones. Another really, really great starter grant is Q from Margins of Error Gallery. I can throw their Instagram in the chat in a second, but they also offer $1,000 grants for community initiatives. Their grant cycle opens in the winter, so like November, December. I would really recommend those. I'm using a Q grant to fund issue 2 of Crip Collab, which is a collaborative zine for disabled artists that are 2SQ2 BIPOC folks. And yeah, $1,000 can go a long way. So like I really recommend applying for smaller grants. If you're someone that's like really comfortable with writing, you can try to go for like the medium baby grants, I would call it. So things like Outreach, as opposed to going straight into Toronto Arts Council, Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council of the Arts. I'd really recommend looking for little ones. I'd also recommend following like Workman Arts, following, Outreach. Following Outreach, actually, a friend of mine runs their Instagram account and posts lots of different like grants and like paid work opportunities. So I'd recommend following them. Also recommend following Sketch. They've got a really great like roster of resources that they post every day also. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Like grant writing is so daunting and scary. So thank you for that, Pree. If anyone has anything else to add, we have about 3 minutes left.
I just want to say something quickly too about like there's lots of opportunities and ways to kind of start your own community and start your own like and be a leader in terms of like helping other people and helping yourself, talking about these issues. Like these are really great initiatives and projects. But I also want to stress that, you know, not everyone is a leader. And if that's not you, like, that's okay. Participate in somebody else's project. Like, you don't have to apply for a grant and start for your own thing. You can also, you know, find somebody else who's looking for support and like, and help them, you know? So it's like the different people, I think, have their different things, and not everyone has to be the person that does it. Like, everyone has, you know, there's like those people who are good with money, or people who are good with like care, or people who are good with listening, like, and we should all like take value in all of those different aspects in contributing to a project too. So don't feel like you have to like go out and do that, like go out and do the thing. Like, you don't have to. You can also just like work with other people too. And that's the best part about creative industries, is that we all work together. Like, no person is an island, really. We have to work together. So
thank you. We have 2 more questions in the last 1 minute. But Shane asked, how do you stay motivated to create or stay creative during the pandemic?
I can answer that one. Honestly, I'm not that social. So the pandemic was kind of like, yay, I have an excuse to like just stay at home. But like staying creative in pandemic has had me like pursue things that I wouldn't pursue otherwise, like screen printing and sun printing using the sun. And like instead of using like huge projectors and everything, it's really allowed me to think outside of the box. Because I no longer have studio access. But yeah, I don't know. I think my arts practice has definitely like grown over the pandemic.
Thank you for that. We're right at 2, but if anyone has to go, feel free to head out. And then if anyone wants to say that we have 1 more question from Jordan, but if you have to go, feel free to head out. Since it's 2 p.m.
Yeah, I have to head out for another commitment, but I just wanted to say like, thank you so much for having me. I threw in the chat, like for Shane's question, I think to remember that your arts practice brings you joy, or like whatever the hobby is that brings you joy. And to just like block off time to like do the fun thing. Like don't treat it like a task or like you have to go work out or whatever. And I know that the last question was for Jordan or for Amanda from Jordan, but I just wanted to add like consent, ongoing consent practices and everything you do. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I'm gonna run, but I hope that you continue to have a lush conversation.
Thank you so much, Pree. See you.
Bye. Really nice to meet you, Amanda. Bye, everyone.
I'll just answer Jordan's question quickly, and Bisma, if you want to jump into, like, feel free after. I think that there's a certain amount of responsibility that we have to do with sort of understanding our own relationships. If you're consistently going to someone to emotionally dump, are you also returning you know, that sort of energy to them as well? Are they also, you know, able to talk to you about their emotions, that so it's not like a one-way street? I think it's just remembering like that kind of balance as well, but also you know, reflecting on the ways that we take care of ourselves also. I know that in many ways for me personally, like I used to do the thing where I would emotionally dump on people because I was not taking care of myself. And so I looked to the other person to take care of me. And there's nothing wrong with other people taking care of you, and definitely talk to somebody if you need to talk to them. But also I think to remember to do the work to try and take care of ourselves too, if we are able to get to that point. And it's not like a instant thing as well, but it's just a sort of like mindfulness of the ways that we can you know, not just prioritize like getting better or anything like that, but just as sort of understanding with yourself about what you need in order to not feel emotionally you know, like you need to dump on people or anything. And also I'm gonna also just say that the word dump is a weird word and maybe I shouldn't have used it, but yeah, it's just like, you know, sort of just remembering mindfulness and that balance between you and your friend, but also taking care of yourself also, so that maybe these things can be explored further. Does that does that answer the question? I'm not really sure. I constantly go on tangents. This one, does she want to add to that too, or?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah, ongoing consent, just making sure you're giving back just as much as you're taking.
Yeah, like a relationship of reciprocity and ongoing, like checking in with each other, like, is this cool with you? Like, do you not want to talk about this thing right now? That sort of thing, even. Yeah, so thank you so much, Amanda, Bisma, Pree, for joining us, and for everyone for joining us today, and for adding your social media or websites in or resources in the chat. So today, I'll stop recording in a sec, but so the recording today will be posted on createcollab.ca. I think Miranda will put the link in the chat super soon. And yeah, I think it's mostly it. Thank you so much for joining us today, and talking to everyone about your experiences and how you're navigating everything, like the creative industries and being an artist.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank